Hello, we're going to talk today in this presentation about the status and roadmap for Zephyr on Espressif devices. We will talk a little bit, small introduction, then we will discuss the Zephyr project in Espressif, the history of this project in Espressif, the Zephyr as part of our Espressif portfolio, the Zephyr product, and finally, some planning and some schedule to what's coming ahead of us. So let's get started. I'm Ricardo. I'm currently a product and project manager for Zephyr in Espressif. Many may know me from um, joining community forums, the GitHub, trying to help people. So occasionally trying to help new developers in Zephyr. I've been working with embedded systems since 2003, and I joined Espressif in April 2020. So let's talk a little bit about what's been happening in Zephyr within Espressif, as we always get lots of questions about the status. So in 2021, during the Developer Summit, I did a quick talk, a lightning talk about the Zephyr status. In the same year, we decided to make a press release talking about Zephyr and other operating systems that we were developing for Espressif. In the next year, we talked about Zephyr again on a press release, updating the last status. In the DevCon, first DevCon 2022, we also talked about applications of AMP, asymmetric multiprocessing in Zephyr, and we did a demo. It was all Zephyr based. In 2023, Silvio talked for the Open Source Summit in Prague about ESP32 and AMP once again. And during his presentation, he briefly talked about the project status. And we have been questioned a lot about status since then, and um, we do have been active in communication. So when people see that the last communication we did was in 2023, they ask if, oh, did you guys stop? No, we haven't stopped. Actually, the opposite. We've been very active into the Zephyr scene. People do some Google search and find old articles, but for those who are developing, they find this issue on GitHub, which is more like an overview, and we have been updating this with new content, and probably when this presentation is out, there might be more content being released, and this information may be already old, as we have been very active into adding new devices to Espressif. Besides all that communication, we have been seeing some questions being recurrent. For example, what do we have the Zephyr port for? What kind of plans do we have? If we have a roadmap, if we're going to support a chip, a peripheral, a protocol, and always the follow-up question to that is, when will it be available? Can I use Zephyr for my project? Very often, we see that on several social network websites. And maybe the most asked question, how's the overall support for ESP32 in Zephyr? That's why we're having this talk. And we're going to cover this on a broad sense. So the Zephyr is an open source project, and I think it's worth, maybe some people may not be aware of it. So in a very short, I would say, presentation, it's a scalable RTOS for all types of applications. It doesn't mean that it needs to be for one thing or for the other. There is a very active community, and it's managed by the Linux Foundation. It's supported by major players in the embedded arena, from tools manufacturers to service providers, and also by manufacturers. And it's an open source license, the Apache license. I'm not going to dive into what is Zephyr because there is a lot of resources available. There is the website. Um, People can search on GitHub for Zephyr _RTOS, where they're going to find the issue reporting. They also will find a discussion also on GitHub. There is a Discord channel, and there is a YouTube channel where um, users can find my presentation on the 2021 Developer Summit. It's a very active project. We can see that there is a growth in commits over time. Important to note, it's very active. So we see a lot of open commits, but also we see a lot of closed commits, merged actually, and same for issues. So we can assume that this project is far from stagnation. I also would like to talk a little bit about our team working on Zephyr. Besides me, we have a full team dedicated to working on Zephyr. So we have Silvio, Marcio, Lucas, Marek, and Rafael. You can see their contributions on GitHub, on push requests, on Discord, answering questions. So we have been very active in that sense as well. And of course, we always ask for help from the community, as it's always good to have more eyes into our code. So if you see any commit from this team, it's from Espressif. So as I said, the team is dedicated to support Zephyr. We can see also that we have lots of open issues, but also lots of closed issues. Same for push requests. And we have been committing content to Espressif's developer portal. So if users look for the tag Zephyr, they will find content. Currently, it's still, we have very few articles, but we plan to add tutorials, roadmaps, guides on the Espressif developer portal. Okay, we'll be talking now for the history of this project in Espressif, how it started, and to understand, as we see a lot of people that they start to hear about Zephyr recently, and they want to join, and sometimes they find some of our devices not fully supported, or some things that are work in progress, and they may feel a little bit of fear. So it's important to understand that we have a consistent history on working on this project. So around 2016, ESP32 came out, and I did some forensics, and they could find that there was some questions made about Zephyr support. By that time, we can assume that ESP32 was a brand new chip, and ESP-ADF was the focus. It was on its first releases, and not much happened on the Zephyr and ESP32. In 2017, we saw some community efforts, and they went for a while. But I think the major roadblock for ESP32 was the lack of Wi-Fi support. And well, this is one of the biggest or main peripherals of ESP32. Lacking it takes a lot of the benefits away. We still have a very good SoC, but we lose the main differentiator. In 2020, Espressif joins the Zephyr community. I joined the company with the goal of starting the Zephyr project and transform it into a product. We had very humble goals. One of them was try to reuse as much of ESP-IDF code as possible, and second, try to make Wi-Fi work. And by that time, we instead of using the plain ESP-IDF, we knew we would evolve it, but for that time it was easier to keep ESP-IDF, and we asked for the creation of the HAL Espressif, and it was basically a modified ESP-IDF fork with a lot of unnecessary code. 2021, we saw Wi-Fi with, it took quite a while to have everything working. So we finally managed to make Wi-Fi work and also Bluetooth. And after that, we also supported the ESP32C3 and the ESP32S2. Also, we can just go to GitHub and verify this history. In 2022, we focused on increased peripheral support. We started to have some questions about the second CPU core on ESP32, what we were going to do with it. We decided to use AMP. Seems to us that it was a different application from the other operating systems that we had that already worked with SMP. We started to work on MCU boot, Espressif port. It was kind of more stable. And we did a lot of work on tooling and debug tools and enabling more ways or better developer experience. In 2023, we enabled ESP32S3. We had the demonstration on the Open Source Summit of AMP, not only a hello world, but a little bit more. Silvio did a motor control example. You can all check that video. We also managed to make the Zephyr port of MCU boot to work with our devices. And it was by the time a work in progress, but it was operational. And after the Zephyr release 3.5, we started to consider that it was no longer a proof of concept, that it was solid enough, and it was an alpha level product or prototype. Then 2024, first quarter, with the release of Zephyr 3.6 with the hardware model V2, which also helps our efforts in the AMP front. Right after that, we managed to deprecate the IDF boot and the ESP IDF in Zephyr. So we moved from a new repository called ESP HAL third party, which is the source for HAL Espressif, which just take the HAL components from ESP IDF. We managed also to remove the ESP IDF partition. So with the adoption of Simple Boot, which is kind of an awkward naming because actually it's the lack of a bootloader, and we just had so the Zephyr experience with the Espressif devices was more close to the regular or general experience. And with those changes, we considered that our port now was on beta level. It was kind of high confidence prototype. Second quarter of this year, ESP32C6, the basic CPU was started to be supported, and we engaged in a major bug fix and cleanup. For this quarter, which is almost ending by the time of the DevCon, we experienced, we kept hunting bugs and cleaning up from the major changes that we had in the last quarter. There was the release of Zephyr 3.7 long-term support. It's the first release under a beta flag for us. We're also focusing on peripherals and bug fix, and we saw ESP32C2 being supported. And then we start to talk about future. We know that there will be Zephyr 4.0, a release in November of 24, according to Zephyr plans. And we consider that the Zephyr port will become production ready. And let's halt a little bit here because that's a very important concept. Um, when it's production ready, it doesn't mean that the code is good. There is a lot more than it. And then we should, um, and then we start talking about the Zephyr as part of Espressif portfolio. What do we mean by production ready? It doesn't mean only good source code. It means a little bit more than that. It means that, well, the effort has clearly defined goals. We have internally a mature development process. We have user side stability. We have software quality control, and we do have a product support model. What does all that mean? It means that it's not that we're just coding. We're actually able to look into it as part of other efforts to build products on top of that. So how's that part of our offer? First, we've been keeping communicating with the community. Like I said, when I showed this a brief of this table the other time, it has constant updates. There's big chances that when this presentation is out, this table is already outdated. So the best thing is go to that device, to that issue, and see this device table as new as possible. So we kept constant communication to the status of our product or our port as an offer for the community. So this has been regularly. People can post questions there, post discussions. So we always try to keep this updated, or even discuss if they need more information on one specific peripheral. Second, next to that, goals. We do have some goals for the Zephyr product as part of Espressif's portfolio. First, to offer a Zephyr solution for Zephyr developers. May sound obvious, but if we take the first in the very beginning of this, when we started the history, that people went to esp32.com to ask for Zephyr. So it's to offer a Zephyr solution for Zephyr developers. Offer an alternative to ESP-IDF. So people may like Espressif devices, but they may want to use a different operating system. So we give them freedom to choose. Explore different types of solutions and technologies, meaning that we learn from the way Zephyr does things. We try to contribute, so we learn that, and that learning gets to the whole company. Of course, support our devices, and of course, promote Espressif products, reach broader audience. Our development process is mature. When some things come out of it, we decided to keep it community oriented. So we joined the community, and our development goes upstream. We do have an internal repository, but it aims for internal reviews for things that we're not confident that are good enough to be exposed, and for our internal CI. So for those two reasons, we keep an internal repository, but everything that we do will go upstream. We have our internal product development cycle. Like I said, we planned it as a proof of concept, pre-alpha, alpha, beta, and we're looking now to make it a product. We're trying to keep as much as possible our alignment to the Zephyr community. So when requested changes, because maybe we did something that's not exactly how it should be, we're willing to listen, we're willing to change. Of course, sometimes we may argue, but we have some alignment. So I would say very good alignment with the community. And we try to reuse code as much as possible, enjoy community work, not replace community work with ours. Try to contribute when external developers help our efforts. We try to engage in a positive way with them. User side stability, which means that we try not to break applications. We try to be consistent in our offer. For example, the migration from ESP-IDF to ESP-HAL third party as source for the code means that we got more agility and less confusion from the user side. We try as much as possible to keep a vanilla Zephyr experience, meaning that maybe besides of West Espressif commands, most likely everything that you can do with other Zephyr supported devices, you can do with Espressif. That's our goal. We may have some work to do, but that's a commitment. We're trying to align our project schedule to the Zephyr release schedule. So we make sure that important things don't get committed day one to a big release. We try to have important things before the release. And as I said, we do have stats reports, so users can just check if what they need is available or not, and then question. Also, on the user side stability, we have defined quite of a cycle on how to support devices. So we always start with CPU, then minimal peripherals, then radio, then the rest of the peripherals, the basic and the advanced ones. So users, when they start seeing our devices, they will note that we have been doing incremental support on all SoCs already supported, and we've been adding new content. Finally, it goes unnoticed because there's a lot of internal work on this, but we do have an internal CI infrastructure with hardware in the loop testing. We have an internal code review process, so we're really considering to avoid regressions, increase our test coverage, and when sometimes we're not committing a lot of new code upstream, is because we're increasing our testing ability, increasing our testing capabilities. So software quality is of a big concern. And finally, we also consider that product support is really important. So bug reports and feature requests, we're listening to GitHub issues on the Zephyr account, on the Zephyr underline RTOS. We're based our technical support and suggestions using the community outlets. So there's GitHub discussions, there's also Discord channel, we've been listening to them. Currently, until the next LTS, and well, here comes a little bit of a speculation, maybe 4.7, if the trend is kept. We'll be rolling release. It means that to get the best solution and the best code and the best fixes, the latest version is usually advisable until we reach the next LTS after 4.0, which is the one I said, oh, here we became product, probably 4.7. And also, I'd like to share that we have internally Zephyr as, well, we take it as standard product definition. So we do have a vision for it. And it is to offer Zephyr as a community-driven alternative to ESP-IDF, promote ESP Espressif devices while making the most of Zephyr features, which is one sentence summary of the product concept. I can also say that becoming a product doesn't change much in several ways. So as I said on my first presentation, there is no expectation that we're going to stop our efforts. We're not forking. We're going to keep it upstream and community driven. As I said, we want to provide the closest experience to a plain and vanilla Zephyr as possible. And we are as much as possible, or we try, or we have effort, or we have the intention to be a community player, while still trying to contribute with positive discussions and explanations and whenever possible. We have 2 new commitments that so far we have been a little bit, it was a little bit on the side. We were not paying attention to the Zephyr release schedules. Now it's something that we want to take more as part of our own planning and be more adherent to the upstream long-term support release program. Okay, let's talk a little bit now about the future. Now that I introduced Q4, but there's a lot more than just that. But first, I would like to do some disclaimer, and I do hope and I count with the goodwill of my audience today. We're going to mention a lot of future events from third parties that have no commitment to follow this schedule. So a lot of caution is advised when taking this information into planning. As usual, we do have ESP-IDF as our flagship tool. If anything from these next slides doesn't confirm or happen that way, people can always fall back to ESP-IDF. And it's always, like I said, good to go to Discord or GitHub to talk with us, to question if there is any important information for any planning. Just this is an overview. And like I said, please take it with caution. This is what we expect. And there's lots of expectations from third parties. That said, let's go for our next schedule. Okay, so going back a little bit, Q4 this year, we are updating the base of the HAL. HAL Espressif is based on ESP-IDF 5.1.2. We're moving to 5.1.4 or the head after that, but will be at least 5.1.4 before 5.0. We're still consolidating and fixing issues. And we do expect, as I mentioned, that our release will be production level by Zephyr 4.0. We already started working on the RF components of ESP32C6, Wi-Fi Bluetooth, and we do have it on plans. Somewhere in Q4, we should start it. We are most likely will begin our migration from HAL 5.1 to HAL 5.3. And we do expect a better integration of the Espressif port of MCU boot with Zephyr. Just a small take here. It's currently you need to build them separately, and we want to improve that. Moving ahead for 2025 first quarter, we expect to start the support of ESP32P4 after HAL 5.3 is merged. We expect to start the basics, the CPU basics of ESP32H2. And as we have been consistently doing and attending, I expect that community will raise questions and issues, and we've always planned to be attending them. On the second quarter, we expect to be working on the RF components of ESP32H2. We do expect that there will be a Zephyr release, maybe 4.2 or 4.3. So like I said, it's expected a release according to the release schedule of the project. Not exactly when, but we expect something. We expect start working on HAL 5.4, and we do expect to bring up the CPU of ESP32C5. For 2025 Q3, once again, we expect consolidation and fixes. We are expecting another Zephyr release, and we plan to have the ESP32C5 working. If that's going to happen before or after the Zephyr release will depend on the release schedule when it's published by the Zephyr maintainers. Q4, once again, bug fixing, another HAL update for the next chip generation from Espressif, and once again we do expect a Zephyr release. So this covers basically the whole year of 2025. Some content may be missing, and those are the things that we expect to find to organize into a schedule. They will happen maybe on several span of several quarters. They are ideas that we do have on backlog that we would like to work on them. Unfortunately, basic peripherals and new chips are taking precedence. So we do have the low power modes. We currently have very limited support for low power. After hardware model V2, we were always discussing how we are going to support the low power CPUs. Hardware model V2 came as a solution, so we can use an AMP approach. So there will be some parallel firmware running on the LP CPU. We need to work on 15.4 stacks, OpenThread, and then Zigbee. There is the word controller for trusted execution environments that we know could be something nice to have, but we're still not there yet. And on our devices currently, all cryptography is made on software, and we do have hardware to do that we would like to enable. And finally, community inputs are always welcome. There is the ESP32 status issue that I mentioned several times. There is GitHub through discussions. There is GitHub through feature request, and there is GitHub and there's Discord for chatting and questioning about status. Thanks, everyone. I hope that I made the overall Zephyr status for ESP32 more clear. I do hope that the future plans help for evaluating our devices for future endeavors. I also hope that everyone got the message that our Zephyr product is something that we're investing a lot of energy to it. We consider it as a great product. It has been under intense development. And thanks everyone for the time, and have a good DevCon so far.